Hey everyone, welcome to this final video in our series of building a book Nook Together. I am not going to sugarcoat it. This case has kind of kicked my butt maybe two and a half times. Two and a half times. I had to sand this back down to bare MDF twice because I hated the finishes so much that I felt the need to sand it all the way back down to bare. It's not really, it's kind of wood, bare MDF. But the idea here is I wanted something that had like a book finish. It's a book binding, book nook. So a book finish, a book leather bound book. Let's say book one more time. Let's say it all together. Book finish. And my two previous attempts were spectacular and utter failures. So what I was left with was this idea of kind of stippling in this sort of leathery sort of thing. So starting with a dark base layer, building up layers of brown, finally moving into this brick color, this kind of brick red color, which I should have probably stopped at, but I didn't. And then adding a really vibrant holiday red color on top of it. Now, overall, I don't think the finish is horrible. I think it's really vibrant and cool and interesting, but it's just too much. You should never look at a book nook and go, wow, that's a really great box. The case should be a supporting member and not the star. So in true fashion, to knock this back, I applied an overly dark layer of a brown black coat, which I was hoping would be more translucent than it ended up. Having gone a little bit too far, not wanting to really continue to add insult to injury, I decided that really this was exactly the way I wanted it. It was amazing and awesome, but was only lacking a little bit of warmth. So to push some of these reds that were still a little bright back, warm everything up and give it a nice finish, I'm going to apply some clear Liquitex burnt umber, some of the liquid color, gloss medium and varnish and water, and then apply maybe 2, 3, 6, 8 layers of this until I built up enough of sort of a tinted varnish that it was warm enough that I was kind of happy where it landed. This I could do gradually, and I think I'll let you be the judge at the end. Take a look at the final beauty shots. Let me know where you think we landed. Let me know down in the comments. At this point, I could also glue in the final wall. I'm not going to be doing any more work on the interior, so it's time to really do final assembly. This also helps to square up and true up the overall structure, and it will even get more truer and squarer when we get the ceiling glued in. I have a separate video that really goes into detail on how I use copper tape for lighting, so I'll post that above. What I like about this technique is it's extremely tidy and easy to do. Even though it looks like I'm really struggling to avoid burning myself and get this first LED in place, it's actually much easier than using wire. Wire is, I think, even more fiddly, and this is a very, very compact way to do this. It also helps anchor the LEDs in place because the tape is adhered to the panel. I'm going to do all of the negative leads first. Negative leads on LEDs are generally the short leg. There's also a flat spot on the negative leads. And then once that's done, I need to insulate those from the other leg, the other connection. I'm using Kapton tape. This is a specialty tape that's a very heat resistant tape used in electronics and electronic manufacturing. You could use masking tape, something that's not going to melt if you get too close to it with a soldering iron. This strip is my positive connections. These are my positive legs, leads, runs. And I'm going to start by soldering on the resistors. You should use an LED resistor calculator. I'll post one down in the description below to figure out what resistors to plug in here. This is basically a 5-volt circuit. So I'm using, I think I ended up with 220 ohm resistors on this. But again, you should do your own calculations based on the LEDs that you're using. These were some warm white LEDs that I had kicking around. Before we can get all the electrical finalized, I do also need to install the ceiling. So I'm working here to drill out for the LEDs for the downward lighting, the down lighting. LEDs, especially these crystal clear ones, can cast a bit of a pattern due to the nature of the diode, so I'm scuffing here with a sanding stick and a little bit of a Scotch-Brite pad to add just a little bit of frost to it to diffuse that, just so that I don't see any weird artifacts, patterns, or shapes being cast by the LED themselves. You can see on the left side, those are really close to the wall. I think I would have preferred to move them out a little bit more, maybe an inch or so out, but I'll let you decide. You can post some comments on what you think at the very end. Disguising and hiding them is important. If you go in and you look at your Nook and you see some LED bulbs in the ceiling, that'll really kind of harsh the mellow there and spoil the illusion. So these are intended to hide the LEDs. They are like floor joists or ceiling joists, and they do a really nice job of disguising them. Here is the final routing for the electrical for the ceiling. I'll post over on my Patreon page some schematics of the wiring for this particular Nook. I can also now, with this done, glue in the ceiling, and it's going to again help reinforce the squareness and the shape of the overall Nook itself. It all pulls everything to square. There's a little bit of a twist to it, but not enough that can't be kind of straightened out and aligned as we put it into the actual case itself. With everything glued up, I can start making final connections. I can connect the ceiling to the back and the side panels to the back. So you can see on the left, I have my positive and negative coming from the window side into the back panel, where I've also soldered in 3 LEDs for lighting behind the door that is kind of going to come through the crack of the door. I'm bringing my positive connection over and connecting that, and I'll do the same for the negative. I also need to block out any light coming in through the door, and that's what I'm doing here by just gluing in this little panel. We don't want any light coming in through the back. This is going to be powered by batteries. I'm using 4 AA rechargeables, which is about 4.8 volts nominally. If you use alkaline, it'd be more like 6. So be sure that when you calculate your resistors for your LEDs, you take into account whether or not you're using rechargeables or alkaline. When in doubt, err on the side of the higher voltage. This has a built-in switch, which is really nice. You don't have to worry about fussing with switches. And the way that I've got this mounted is the case is mounted on the back panel, and then it just kind of slides in and connects, and I just kind of wedge it in like that, and it holds in place quite nicely. Very simple, really clean, super elegant. Here is the top, here are the sides, and we do a little quick test. For glazing, my recommendation is if you're getting started, before you go kind of mess with glass and trying to figure out how to cut and score glass and work with glass, I've got plenty of scars to attest to working with glass. These panels that you can get at your local hobby store that are a glass replacement for frames are really easy to work with. A couple quick scores, you can snap them along the score line. This is not acrylic. It's a little bit more flexible and rubbery, which is nice. You don't have to worry about cracking. And so these are great materials to work with, and they're readily available as glass replacements. The downside of this is it is staticky, if that's a word. It will attract dust like there's no tomorrow, and it scuffs or scratches when you try to clean it. So I'm trying to be very, very careful to not mess it up too much as I'm peeling it. But the minute I go to try and clean it, I'm gonna get some scuffing. So I prefer to use glass at the end of the day. But again, if you're just getting started, this is very affordable, very easy, and pretty darn safe material to work with, as opposed to working with something like glass. And with that, our journey on this series has come to an end. I'm a little sad about that. I'd like to take this time to thank my patrons, W, Jesse, Tina, Mary, and my newest patron. Welcome to the Creative Cabal, Janet. Your support and generosity is truly appreciated, as it allows me to continue to make this type of content. creating fantastic and fantastical worlds in miniature. If you'd like to join the Cabal, be sure to visit my Patreon page, like and subscribe if you haven't already. Post comments. Tell me what you think worked and didn't work about this particular project now that we have completed it and come to its conclusion. I try to respond to every comment that comes in. I really appreciate spending the time with you, and I do look forward to many more random making encounters, more adventures to come, many projects in the pipeline. Have a good one. Thank you all, and happy making.